Oh, wait. Do we read this one? No,
I don't think so, not yet.
no. Mano mani, mind of. So, verse 42 in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Mano mani, mind devoid of thought. The breath, prana, moving in the middle passage makes the mind still. This steadiness of mind is itself called the state of mano mani, devoid of thought. When the Shakti moves through Pingala, the left brain hemisphere is activated and only certain faculties of the mind operate. When Ida flows, the right brain hemisphere is active and other faculties operate. However, when energy is passing through the corpus callosum from one hemisphere to the other, then there is equilibrium. When a steady flow of energy or prana moves through Sushumna, the mind becomes still. When the particular frequency of the energy is such that it arouses perfect stillness of thought activities and no awareness of the external or internal world, that is Manomani Avastha. Manomani means absence of individual mind, absence of fluctuations in the individual consciousness, and absence of conscious, subconscious, and unconscious states. By cutting off the external stimuli to the brain over a long period of time, the conscious functions of the brain turn off, and shuna or void is experienced. This state of shuna or nothingness often leads to the more positive experience of manomani. Verse 43 and 44. By practicing the various kumbhakas, wondrous perfections are obtained. Those who are knowers practice the various kumbhakas to accomplish them. The 8 kumbhakas are Surya, Bahita, Ujjayi, Shitkari, Shatali, Bastrika, Bhamari, Murcha, and Plavini. I'm hoping she gets into each one of those, but these are all breath, pranic, like kumbhakas are the that pause of breath, the retention, and I recognize some of these as pranayamas, so let's see what she says. There are various ways in which pranayama can be practiced and utilized with retention or kumbhaka. The yogis devised 8 specific techniques, and these have become the traditional Hatha yoga practices of pranayama. The most important aspect of pranayama is kumbhaka. The manner in which you breathe in and out is also significant, but it is the retention which has to be developed. Kumbhaka arouses the inherent potential in the higher regions of the brain, and in fact, it affects the whole brain. Each type of pranayama can arouse a different faculty and body function. There are more than 8 ways in which pranayama can be practiced, but there are only 2 ways to perform kumbhaka. The breath can either be held internally or externally. External retention is known as Bharanga Kumbhaka, and internal is Atanga Kumbhaka. These forms of kumbhaka are performed consciously by control of the breath, but there is another form of kumbhaka which occurs spontaneously through the practice of pranayama. It is called Kavala Kumbhaka. When pranayama is done with effort and not spontaneously, it is called Sahita Pranayama. The 8 practices of Sahita Pranayama are Suri, Bahita, Ujjayi, Shikari, Shatali, Bastrika, Bhamari, Murachar, and Plavini. There are other forms of pranayama, such as Nadi Shodhana, which has previously been done and described in this chapter. Viloma, Anuloma, Viloma, Pratiloma, and Kapalabhati, but they are not traditional techniques of pranayama. Although Kapalabhati is a pranayama technique, traditionally it is considered as a shat karma. In the practice of Surya Beta pranayama, inhalation is done through the right nostril, activating Pingala Nadi, and exhalation is through the left. Ujjayi is deep breathing with contraction of the, oh my goodness, I don't know what that word is, epiglottis.
Epiglottis.
Epiglottis. That must be the thing in the throat.
Good definition.
Yeah.
Works for me.
It could be something in the stomach, and I would be happy with my definition.
Okay.
I know how to practice Ujjayi, so it's a slight restriction in the back of the throat. And that's how I've always learned it and described it. So yeah. Sheet Karmi is performed by breathing in slowly through the mouth and teeth. Shatali is done by breathing in through the rolled tongue. Vastrika is rapid breathing. Brahmari is performed by making a humming sound with exhalation. That's the bumblebee breath one we practice. Muchaha emphasizes retention to create a fainting feeling. And Plavani is done by swallowing air into the stomach. More recently, pranayama has been categorized into balancing practices, vitalizing practices, and tranquilizing practices. Of course, the overall effects of any pranayama are tranquilizing. However, some particularly activate pranic movement and the sympathetic nervous system, while others pacify or cool the system. The vitalizing practices rapidly create heat in the physical and subtle bodies, and such practices are more suitable for middle to advanced sadhakas. Beginners should always start with Nadi Shodhana to balance the breath and Ida Pingala or the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. Tranquilizing pranayama practices are those which pacify the body and mind. They simultaneously increase the pranic flow and arouse awareness of the subtle vibration of energy. Such forms of pranayama stimulate activity in the parasympathetic and central nervous systems. These techniques should be performed once the pranic flow is balanced, and therefore they generally involve breathing through both nostrils. Verse 45 and 46. At the end of inhalation, Jaladhara Bandha is done. At the end of Kumbhaka and beginning of exhalation, Uddiyana Bandha is done. By contracting the perineum, contracting the throat, and drawing the abdomen up, the prana flows through the Brahmanadi. So the Jalandhara Bandha is contracting the throat at the end of inhalation. That's what she says. So you breathe in and you lock the throat. I do this by pulling my chin down to my chest. And at the end of Kumbhaka, which is this retention here, and beginning of when I'm going to exhale, Uddiyana Bandha is done, which is drawing the abdomen up. We talked about this a little bit the other day with the locks. Pranayama actually involves the practice of the breath control in combination with the bandhas and mudras. Without bandhas, pranayama is incomplete. Either the three bandhas, Jalandhara, Uddiyana, and Mula Bandha, should be done together or in a different combination. After completing inhalation, when you are about to hold the breath, the head should be dropped forward so the chin is close to the collarbone and the throat is blocked. If both hands are on the knees, the elbows should be straightened and the shoulders raised. This is Jalandhara Bandha. According to Yogi Swatmarama, Uddiyana and or sucking in of the abdomen should be done after retention and beginning of rachaka or exhalation. Once exhalation is complete, Jalandhara Bandha should be done and Uddiyana fully employed. Uddiyana Bandha is only practiced with external retention or Bahiranga Kumbhaka. Then the stomach and lungs are completely empty and the abdomen can easily be drawn in and up. Mula Bandha, or contractions of the muscles of the perineal body or cervix, can be done with either Antaranga or Bahiranga Kumbhaka. After inhalation, Jalandhara and Mula Bandha are practiced together, and after exhalation, the three bandhas, Jalandhara, Uddiyana, I can't say Uddiyana without putting bandha at the end of it. That's why I keep laughing at myself. Uddiyana, and Mula are performed. When the three bandhas are practiced in combination, this is called Maha Bandha. However, in certain pranayama practices, the three bandhas cannot be done together. For example, it is inappropriate to perform Uddiyana Bandha in Murchaka pranayama. Though the bandhas are utilized in pranayama, they are considered as separate practices. Bandhas are powerful practices that generate and accumulate prana in specific parts of the physical and subtle bodies. They are essential in the practices to awaken the chakras in Sushumna Nadi. Brahma Nadi is the innermost core of Sushumna Nadi, and it is extremely significant in the process of spiritual awakening. The outer surface of the middle nadi is Sushumna. Inside that is Vajra Nadi. Within that, Chitrini, and in the very center, Brahma Nadi. Sushumna represents Tamo Guna or inertia. Vajra Nadi, Raju Guna, or dynamism. Chitrini, Sattva Guna, and Brahma Nadi represents the pure, unconditioned state of consciousness. If the prana can be made to penetrate Brahma Nadi, there will be total absorption of the individual consciousness with the cosmic source. Prana is the life force of the individual, and when it merges back into its original source, there is complete unity of every aspect of your being. I'm going to pause there for a second.
Thank you.
Oh, anytime I'm reading, Sue, just chime in and be like, hold on.
I was going to jump in at the end of this. It's just, some of this is familiar because some of this is just last week. Amanda was leading us through breathing that was as described here. But boy, it's a different language, and there's attaching all of, even if I understand something, there's attaching the English to, what is this, Sanskrit?
Yeah.
And it's a little overwhelming. Maybe it's because it's so early. I don't know.
I feel like our brains are all a little foggy this morning too. Me and
Yeah.
Andrew were talking about that.
Yeah, some of the mist drifted in and in.
So I think in summary, she's saying that we have these 8, she's calling them kumbhakas, but they're breath work. There are more than 8 pranayamas, but she's speaking on these 8 that you can practice this kumbhaka, this pause on. And I think there was one part in the book, or somebody was speaking, maybe it was Amanda, about this idea of we're doing the breath work, but we're trying to build up the prana in the body. So the retention on the inhale is holding the prana in. And I guess it's like a visual practice for me, that I just imagine like all that good energy, like feeding me, almost like how food sits in your stomach. And like when you have a nice healthy meal, you just feel amazing. And so when you're doing this, like versus like a very heavy meal, you just feel really heavy. So when you're doing, for me, when I'm doing this breath work, And I'm doing those slight pauses at the top and the bottom pause. I don't know if you've practiced that before. It's not that it's challenging for me. It is challenging, but it's almost like scary. You're completely out of air.
Mhm.
And it's like a trusting practice with yourself. Like your body will breathe. You'll have air again, but when you're completely empty, it's a totally different practice than when you're full and you're holding the breath.
Yeah, I think it's physically more difficult. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I would bet any money it's physically harder to do than to hold your breath when after you've just inhaled. I see the pauses I understand to be a place where you can more approximate almost an empty open mind. And the different breathing exercises for me help me to focus, and they're very calming. They sort of calm the mind chatter because you got to pay attention if
Mhm.
you're doing the breathing exercises, especially if you're doing inhalation, lock and hold, and then release the lock, exhale, lock and hold. And that's I got to really think when I do that. That's
Yeah.
hard. It's not so easy. And I totally agree with you about the lock and hold when your lungs feel like they're pretty empty. I think you might be right that it has a psychological thing as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I'm just trying to get it all together, I'll just do the inhalation, lock and hold, but I won't hold after the exhalation.
Yeah, that's really when I think you're getting like that's not something I do very often, and it's not something teachers guide me to do very often. Like it's not like a something that's offered in classes unless your teacher really knows everybody in the room.
Yeah. And
I
I
would,
also think not only is it not often, but there's another thing that happens, which is very often and in fact, remember they talked about the rhythm or the beats of the inhalation and exhalation, and very often it's inhale one, hold two, exhale two, hold two, inhale one, or
yeah,
something like that. And
yeah,
that makes it even harder to hold after the exhalation because you've exhaled, you've cleared out. It feels like more than you inhaled.
yeah. And then only getting to take in a little bit. Like you want to take this full breath in, but that's where the control builds.
Yeah.
Like after you're completely exhale, you want to breathe in and take this big open. But that's I think what, and I should say that it's not offered in the classes I take. Like it's not. I don't know. Different lineages and students and studios might practice this. I don't know.
It's funny when you said I agree. I haven't had it offered very much in class, but if I do privates, we go there. We can go there if we're doing breathing exercises. But I think that's because, like you said, Pam, the teacher knows the student, knows what the student is, not only what the student is capable of, but what's happening that very day, that very hour,
Yeah,
and can make a good judgment as to whether or not this is a good move.
yeah, I guess. And then she's just reminded, I guess she's just telling us, explaining to us what's going on internally. This idea of, we've spoken about the Ida and
Yeah.
Pingala
Mhm.
Shushumana, and the Shushumana in the middle. And then she goes into more detail on that central Shushumana, and she
Mhm.
labels some of the internal, I guess they're like rings, maybe like outside ring, inside ring, and you're trying to get to that Brahma nadi within the Sushumna nadi. Um, and that's where she's saying complete absorption exists. And then it was the bandhas, which it's hard over when you're not in person to for me it's hard to explain these. And it's hard to explain, for me to explain the bandhas, and it was hard for me to hear the bandhas from the teacher. But once I slowly started practicing, I was practicing with the same teacher, and once I was starting to practice a little safely with the bandhas,
Yeah.
then I could, it's just like meditation and gratitude practice. Like until you start practicing it, it's hard to understand what they are. And so that's how I felt about the locks in my body.
Yeah.
And who knows if who knows if I'm even doing them right still, but it feels like I'm doing them right. Versus when I was starting to practice, I was just like sucking my belly button as far in as I could, like I was trying to take a skinny picture. But then I realized it's really different. Like there's like engagement of my core, and I'm pulling like the area above my belly button up, and then I'm trying to get it under my ribs. And it's just like, it's not like a forceful thing for me. Uh, it's not like that skinny girl picture where I'm like sucking in my belly where I can't breathe.
Well, what you said about practicing it really is one of those things where if you do it over and over again, you begin to be able to discriminate between the bandhas. And I agree with you. It's very hard. You can't just read it out loud and then do it. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, and you can't always, like, I'm not trained well enough. I don't know if experienced teachers can see this, but like it's not like I could be like, Sue, you're doing it wrong. Like it's hard to see
Yes. Yeah.
internally how the locks are. Yeah, so do we want to move into alternate nostril breathing, and we can do bumblebee breath today? And if you want to add the retention in, I'm not going to lead you through it today, but if you have it in your practice for alternate nostril breathing and you want to do it at the top of the inhale, at the bottom of the exhale, I feel like you guys have all been showing up and know how to do alternate nostril breathing by now. So setting up with a nice tall spine, and we can continue talking about these verses tomorrow before we move on to Sue, so we're all comfortable. Just breathing through the nose, bringing your right hand over your face, closing your right nostril with your right thumb. Inhale through your left. Close your left, exhale your right. Inhale your right. Close your right, exhale your left. And you can continue on like this for a few more rounds. Adding retention in, maybe seeing if you can equal the counts of inhale and exhale. Counting the breath in for 3 or 4. And then out for 3 or 4. Finishing up your last round, exhaling out through the left nostril. And then you can stay here sitting through both nostrils, or if you want to play with bumblebee breath from Brahmari breath, you'll take your thumbs and close off your ears. And then you'll take your pointer and middle finger and close off your eyes. And you're going to take a deep breath in, and you're going to breathe out through your mouth, but with your lips sealed. And it's going to make a buzzing sound. For me, it creates a vibration in my body, and it feels really good. So inhale. I'll do it one round so you can see. And you just exhale for as long as you can. So you'll lead yourself through 5 rounds of Brahmari breath. And then you'll just go right into your meditation, and I'll set the timer. Bringing your hands to your heart. Namaste. Have a good day.
Not just do the post-trade servicing, but middle office and plug in